The Sony PlayStation launched with a handful of games. The very first of these was Ridge Racer, pushing 3D polygon graphics in a way that had never been seen before. It was a taster, a tech demo of what the PlayStation hardware was capable of. Originally an arcade game, in the 90s there was a term, Arcade Perfect. It meant as close to the arcade version as a console game could get. The official PlayStation magazine hailed it as one of the best arcade conversions of all time. For me, Ridge Racer wasn't arcade perfect, but its visuals at the time were breathtaking. It was fun, and at its core, it let players for the first time get somewhat close to that 3D arcade experience within their living room. The experience hasn't aged too well though. The game now seems clunky, oversensitive and shallow. The first problem is the game's missing features, something it was criticised for at the time. There's no multiplayer at all, and the only race types are standard easy, medium and hard races, and a simple time trial mode against one other car. The game by our standards now, and to some degree the standards of 1995, was no bigger than your average demo. There's only really one track, and although different difficulties use different parts of the track, it's still just a small, short drive. There are only 4 cars to choose from, unless you manage to beat the Galaxian minigame while the game's starting. Doing so will unlock 12 cars total. These cars, while they do certainly feel and look different, they're really not that interesting. In fact, the most interesting part about them is their names, which are references to other Namco games. The truth is, the game was completed in only 8 months by the same team that handled the arcade version. They had to literally remake the game for the PlayStation due to hardware differences. One thing that's focused on the most in this game is the drifting. You can drift around the cliffs or ridges with scenic vistas in the background. Scenic vistas, yeah, I'll give the game that, but although there's not a whole lot of ridges in the game, it's the drifting itself I struggled with the most. It took me a few races to figure it out correctly. Once I did, I tried to use it to the best I could within the races to give me advantage, but I always found it cost me a great deal more than I was gaining. In fact, I had more success not using drifting at all, something the game's AI must have already learned, as none of those drift either. You're probably thinking I'm just not using it correctly, and for the first few races that was the case, but I quickly learned that I could race pretty efficiently just applying a very small amount of drift around the few of the game's tighter corners. If this was the intended way to use drift, I guess you could say it was successful, but trying to drift realistically in an arcade racer is hard to get used to. The mid-level and high-level stages are where the game really becomes interesting. Your car gets a lot faster and drifting is harder to handle. The one track in the game changes, a new area will appear and the sky will change from day to night. These stages are going to take a lot of practice, and in a way that's where the real game lies with Ridge Racer. I can imagine a lot of friends sat on the sofa back in '95 passing the controller to one another trying to beat the high level stages. It's a game where practice will make perfect. So let's talk about that one track. To be fair, it's not a bad track at all. It flows nicely and at times can feel fast and exciting. If you manage to finish first in all 4 of your races, you'll unlock the tracks to playable in reverse, an exclusive feature for the PlayStation. The track is also littered with a few Easter eggs, like a Galaxian minigame up above, adverts for other Namco games such as Cyber Sled, or a Pac-Man within the lights of a distant building. One thing the game was criticised for on its release was its poor AI, and after just a few races you'll see why. Not to mention the fact physics don't seem to apply to them the same way they do to you. They'll hit you, bounce off you, get in your way and drive too slowly at times. It's a real shame, not to mention the huge wheel spin handicap you get when beginning a race, which allows the AI to build up some distance over you. The soundtrack's pretty good. It's full of that catchy techno music from the 90s. But the cars just sound like aeroplanes instead of high performance street cars. For me, the game's just too clunky now. The AI constantly bumping you, the snap at the end of drifting. The shallowness of the overall package keeps this game from being one I get nostalgic about. Although it's the game that started it all, it's not one I revisit too often. There's no denying the impact of Ridge Racer. It showed the world the power of 3D on the PlayStation, but that's all I ever thought of it as, just a tech demo. Thanks for watching.